Okay, so where we left off was we're displaying the user's hand and the computer hand. So far in our program, we have created the deck and we've dealt the 7 starting cards to the players. So what we need to do, again, before we actually start the main part of the program, is the incredibly rare possibility that somebody has been dealt a 4 of a kind as part of their opening hand, but we still have to take care of it here, so we'll just kind of go for it. So what we're going to do, when we're doing the checking for books, we're going to do this in a little bit of an interesting way just to enhance our learning with arrays. We're going to have user score is going to get the value of user score plus our book function. So this is going to be checking to see if that a hand has 4 of a kind. So user hand. So this saves us from sending the score to the user hand function or using this as a Boolean. We're kind of doing it all in one step. So then also comp score is going to be comp score plus book and instead comp hand. And then when we're done, we are going to see out what the 2 scores are. So player score, and then this will be the user score variable. And then see out the computer score, comp score. There we go. What we'll do is we'll create the book function, and it's going to take care of that step. So again, go above int main, and this is a perfect place to make this. Now, what type does this function have? It is going to be acting like an integer because this is a calculation. So we are going to be getting an integer back from it, so int book, and it only needs the one vector. So vector int hand. Now the question is, are we going to make an adjustment to it? The answer is yes, because if we find that there's a 4 of a kind, we're going to be removing it from the hand. So make sure that it is a reference parameter. So we need a few extra tools here. So the first one is we'll need a new vector to keep account of how many of each card there are. So we're going to call it card count. It is going to have 14 places in it, and each of them is going to be 0 because before you actually do the counting, the amount of each card would be 0. So this is 14 places so that the last is 13. Notice that that's important because we're going to be using the last position, which is position 13, to count how many kings we have, which is the 13 card. Now, if we actually find a new 4 of a kind, we're going to need to keep track of that. So we're going to use the new book variable for that. So this is kind of like an if 4 of a kind. Now, is it possible to have 2 new books at the same time? The answer is no, because you're only ever adding 1 card to the hand, and the program isn't going to miss the fact that you have, like a user would, like a player playing the game, you're never going to miss the fact that you had a 4 of a kind. Okay, so now, a couple things. First off, if the hand size, if hand.size is less than 4, we know that it's an impossibility that they could have a complete 4 of a kind because they don't even have 4 cards to begin with. So this is going to be a return 0. So we're going to return 0 here. That's 0 points added because we know that they don't have a 4 of a kind. And then it saves the program from having to go through this mess which we're about to see unfold here. So otherwise, we'll have a for loop. So this is a traversal array, int I 0. Well, I is less than hand size, hand.size, I plus plus. And this is going to be our counting cards, how many of each type we have. So the way this is going to work is we'll have card count. And now we want, whenever we say find a 3, we want position 3 of card count to go up by 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to have hand the value of position I of the hand. So imagine we find a 3. So we found a 3 is the first one. What we want to do is we're going to use that as the position of card count that we're going to increase. So we're going to do a plus plus. So if you have a difficult time understanding what this line of code does, try and figure it out before you move on to the next step, because this is a very important concept to understand. We're using the value of this array position to determine which position of card count should be increased. So that is going to count our cards. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go for, we're going to check for 4s. Int I equals 0. So now this one is now going to traverse the card count that we've just made. So card count, whoops, card count dot size, I plus plus. So now if card count position I is 4, so we found a 4 of a kind, then our new book is going to be whatever number we found. So if there were 4 7s, then this is going to store 7. And then we're going to break because you can only find 1 book per round. So now we're going to check to see, as a result of this, did we actually find a new book? So what we're going to do is we're going to check to see that. So if new book is larger than 0, so that means that, I mean, you can't have 0 as a book because the cards are only 1 to 13. So if it's larger than 0, we're going to say which one it was. So cout book complete new book. There we go. So we'll say which number it is. Now what we're going to do is we'll have to remove it. So we don't know exactly where they are. So say like it's the 7s we want to get rid of. We don't know how far along they are in the array. So we've got to find that position. So for int I equals 0, well, I is less than hand.size I plus plus. So if hand position I equals new book, then we're going to be removing it. So we want to stop as soon as we find the first of those numbers in the array. So here's how this is going to work. We're going to do a hand.erase. We're going to erase all 4 of them. Now where is the first one? That's at hand.begin plus I, right? Because that is the position that we found the first of these numbers. So if it was a 7 and we get to like the 3rd element in the array, that's where the first 7 is. So now we're going to go from that all the way to hand.begin I plus 4. And that will actually, oopsie doodle. So that will actually get rid of all 4 of them, which is great. Once we've done that, we want to break. Because again, you can't get more than one book removed in this situation. So if this was the case, after we remove it, we want to return 1. So we just got a point. And now as an alternative, so if the new book was greater than 0, we'll end up returning 1. Otherwise, let's return a 0 here. We don't need any more code than that. So the logic of this is it checks to see, okay, do we have enough cards to bother doing this step? If not, return a 0. No possibility of a book. Otherwise, let's check to see if there was a new book. We're going to do that by counting how many of every card. If one of them ended up being a 4, then we found out, oh, there's a new book. If that is the case, we are going to remove them and return 1 point. And if that is not the case, we did not find anything that was a value of 4, then we're going to return 0 because there were no points removed. Okay, now returning to the main program, we are going to, well, we've displayed the scores. I should have done this first. And then we're going to pick the starting player. So the starting player is going to be turn equals random modulus 2. So 0 is player, 1 is computer. So we're going to go back and forth between these two values. It's either going to be always a 0 or a 1 in this situation. And then we're also going to want to remove the computer hand. We no longer want to display the computer hand. Okay, so let's save this, and then in the next video, we're going to take a look at creating the player's turn.